what generally most people would identify as a fish category or a whale. Those are the best players to play against. I'm actually going to go over my HUD really briefly here. I'm going to use God Among Men here. Once this goes off the screen. So the 7 is the sample size, 43 is the VPIP, the amount of hands percentage of hands that he plays, 14 is the percentage of hands he raises with, and 2 is the aggression factor. I've kind of got the acronyms, is acronyms I think they're called, on the bottom here for all the rest of the stats. Some of them I just don't have information on. But we have fold to steal, fold to 3-bet, 3-bet, fold to flop c-bet, fold to turn c-bet, fold to river c-bet, c-bet flop, c-bet turn, c-bet river. Just using, as you know, I have 2 different versions of my HUDs, as some people know. I just use the light version at these stakes. I don't have all sorts of 4-bet stats and crazy stuff. Just the basic stuff that I think that you need at these limits. And you don't need a lot. So, I mean, the general strategy here at these stakes is to play a positionally aware game, as I was talking about before, and really just make your c-bets and stuff like that on the flop. But after that, if they're still around, we're going to be doing a lot of pot controlling on the turn. We're not going to be trying to ram hands down the throat of bad players. It does not work like that. We're going to be isolating limpers like this. I'm going to tag him as a fish because he did limp. Just going to let this go. And we're going to be betting big for value, and we're not going to be bluffing too much. Besides, c-betting, we'll be c-betting, of course, but we're not going to be barreling them on the turn and stuff like that. I mean, that's the biggest, the bigger mistakes that players make at these stakes, is trying to get too fancy, playing a lot of crappy hands, out of position, especially, just making life difficult for themselves by getting involved in big pots in marginal spots. We get donked into like this by a player we've identified as a bad player. We've got him as a 31-8, which is an SLP, what I would call a semi-loose passive in the fish category still, though. When he donks out like this, I'm already assuming that a lot of his range does have an ace in it, so I was going to c-bet this flop if folded to me, but now that he donks out, it's only half pot, but I'm still just going to give him credit. I think players like this will have the ace a lot of the times, and that's a spot where there's just no need to get fancy at all. I mean, especially full ring poker. It's a lot of people just sitting around waiting for hands. And it's a lot of time. It's just don't try to get fancy and do crazy stuff. Just believe them basically, because usually they have what they're repping. So as we're talking about in late position here, we're playing a wide range, and I'm going to make it 8 cents here. I didn't talk about bet sizing yet. I'm going to come into the pot normally for 3 times the size of the big blind, which should be 6 cents, and then I'm going to I'm going to add 1 more for each limper, so 6 plus 1 more for the limper here would make 8 cents, as we saw. I'm going to be c-betting a lot, as I said, usually about 60 2/3 pots, something like that. And I'm going to be c-betting pretty much 100% of the time in position against one player, and almost, to be honest, almost 100% of the time against one player, whether in position or out of position. This is a spot where, again, I'm not going to barrel against a likely bad player. We've got 10 hands on him. He has a fish, 40% VPIP. You need about 10 hands, and I'm happy to know where I'm at with the player. Be confident in saying that he probably is somewhere around a 40% VPIP, which is a fish, of course. Or I shouldn't say of course, maybe some people don't know, but anything over 30 VPIP I would identify as a fish. We're just going to let him have it here. Again, it's about just being patient, not doing silly stuff. Check back the turn there, because we had we picked up a gut shot with the 10 there. And there's just no point in barreling bad players here, because he's not going to fold a jack, he's not going to fold a flush draw, he's not going to fold anything to us. So this is just about being patient at these stakes, and just waiting for them to do silly stuff. And we already saw that with this guy. That I think he just dusted off the rest of his stack there, going all in pre-flop. I guess I should say actually at NL2, I'll still make it probably 8 cents with most of my premiums. A lot of times here I'll just make it 8 cents to go. Just because I don't really stagger my opening sizes at any other stakes, but I definitely still do at these stakes because it's just such a circus that there's so many bad players that are just going to call damn near anything, and it doesn't matter if you make it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the blind. So we got another enormous pot here with the player to our right going crazy with an overpair. I mean, generally at NL2, like I said before, it's not really hard to. Okay, so actually we should talk about this hand here. We are in position. He's made it just under 3 times the blind. It's a little bit deep, so I'm actually just going to call in position and, kind of see how the hand plays out. There's some flops I might try to bluff raise because we can't just call every time and only play when we hit our pair, of course. Considering this is the first hand that I think I've ever played against the guy, I'm not sure that I'm gonna get too out of line in this spot. Maybe if I had an ace of hearts or just some sort of backdoor something here. I guess we do have a backdoor straight draw and stuff, but I'm not gonna try to get too out of line at NL2 for the most part. I think it was reasonable to call in position here only because we're very deep and we're in position, and his 3-bet was on a touch on the low side at just under 3 times. Most of the other times I would just be folding in normal conditions. And that's another something to really watch yourself for at these stakes is remember that players generally do 3-bet with a pretty tight range at these stakes, especially the regs. One of the worst things you can be doing is getting yourself calling with speculative hands out of position. A lot of people just won't fold or, I don't know, some suited connector, some low pair, or something like that. You're just up against it out of position. It's not worth. This was a unique situation where I was deep with this guy and in position, and the 3-bet was on the low side, and I had, frankly, a pretty strong hand with ace queen off. So in this spot here, we have a tight regular actually doing the limp behind, or the limp thing here. We're probably almost certainly going to take advantage of it. We have a fish here. We've got him at 31 VPIP over 13 hounds, so we're confident to call him a fish at this point. And I don't want to label this guy as a fish, even though he did limp, because he's more or less a bad reg, is what you would. Once again, I always apologize in these videos when I say these things. If the person who is that person is watching this video, I'm not trying to take offense or anything with you. It's just most good regs. I mean, these are just names. Most good regs do not limp. They would raise from this spot. So when you see a tighter player who's a reg like this with a large gap between the VPIP and the PFR, generally they're not one of the better regs. Basically, they're one of the weaker ones. They're probably break even at best. So as we know here, we're up against a fish. He insta-called us pretty much on the flop. I'm just going to be done with this hand. I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to ram this down his throat, because I know he's not going to fold anything. And, it's possible, or... No, he had the 5-10, so... Can't beat the 5-10. So games are still exceedingly good, as we can see everywhere. There's multiple fish on every single table, it looks like. Or, well, I actually haven't looked around enough to tag some of the other players, maybe. We definitely have bad players everywhere. We got quite a bit of action on table 1 here. Wow. It's quite insane. So I guess this guy takes it all down. Awesome. We've got a 3-bet in front of us here, so we're not even going to think about doing anything in that spot. So I was going to point out before, you can, if you have time, if you're only playing like 4 tables like this, you certainly can table select. There's no real reason not to. It's the first time he's done this, so I'm just going to raise him with pretty much any 2 cards here. I will raise with a very wide range when somebody limps like this from the small blind, simply because I believe that that, well, I have position and initiative, and you're just going to get so many folds before the flop or on the flop. This guy just won a big pot, so I'm assuming he's like all fat and happy now. I don't expect him to actually to screw with me at all in this spot. I am just going to check behind, though. I don't think we need to continue betting for value. That's actually a pretty awful card because a 4 was something that I think was definitely in his range on the flop there. And obviously completes the straight, so we'll just fold that. We don't expect a player like that, especially a poor player who just won a monster pot. He's going to be very happy with himself. It just goes to prove how good of a player I really am. Finally, the poker gods are evening the score. So he's basically, it's just the psychology, right, of just understanding that a player like that is not on tilt at all, and they're not going to screw with you at all. Like, he's betting there for value 180% of the time. Something a lot of players fail to realize is just look at the flow of the game and understand that players that are losing are going to be steaming and bluffing you. Players that are winning are not the ones who are going to be bluffing you. They're going to be ones that are going to be betting for value. It's just a mini bet in this spot, but this is another place where people might go crazy, which I don't see any point in. I'd rather just invite everybody in the pot, including the fish, and try to hit my set in position here and win a huge pot. It's probably going to be difficult to win a huge pot anyways with pocket eights if I just want to play crazy pre-flop. I'd rather just see a flop against a lot of bad players in position and see if I can win a big pot. We do flop an overpair, which is always a little bit interesting because it's a good hand, but it's not. It's definitely important not to go too crazy, like overvaluing and everything. I'm gonna bet. I'm just gonna bet my queens for value in this spot here. I am gonna actually just raise with the overpair. This guy's got a half stack. I think that my hand is probably good against him. I'll make it just a little over 3 times.